Radio 1 FM 90.
Brought to you by Housing Finance Bank, a financial institution regulated by Bank of Uganda. Housing Finance Bank, we make it easy.
Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us for this edition of Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90, broadcasting from the Central Building here in the heart of our city, Kampala. Live on website, which is www.radio1fm90.com. While on that website, you click on the icon with the word Listen Live. We are also live on DSTV. Our audio channel there is 897, and on Star Times, our audio channel is 97. Radio 1 is also live on the different radio listening apps, which can be obtained from the Google stores of your smartphone. My name is Kenneth Lukwago, your host this evening, and today we'll be looking at the perspective of political leaders in Kampala on the ongoing NEMA Wetland Evictions. We all know that there have been evictions going on for over almost 2 weeks, and a number of people have been affected. NEMA did report today, if you've just heard in our news there, that 214 houses have been destroyed or demolished, and this campaign will go on, according to NEMA, to enforce what they think is the right procedure to protect the environment from the dangers that awaits it with the encroachment of people into the wetlands. Well, there have been a number of reactions from different stakeholders. NEMA has been accused of double standards while they are dealing with those that are perceived to be the poor, those who are powerful and rich. Their buildings have been left apparently intact in the gazetted wetland areas. The Lord Mayor of Kampala, Erias Lukwago, has been among those people raising concern connected to the different people located in Kampala where evictions are likely to occur. Today he had a meeting with the executive director of NEMA about these very issues, and from our news there you heard there's been an agreement on a number of issues. So today he joins me in studio to share the perspective of the political leaders in Kampala, knowing that Kampala is on the hilly side of this country where we experience occasional flooding, and partly it has been blamed on the encroachment on the wetlands. Good evening, Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago.
Thank you, my brother, and good evening, the listeners.
All right. Now, this is the first time we're hosting you from the time you went to India for treatment. It's good to see you in good shape and fighting on with spirit.
Well, praise be to the Lord, because I went through an ordeal one cannot imagine. I'm glad that I am back on my feet, and I'm getting stronger by the day, on course to full recovery. I feel, yes, I'm strong enough now, at least to execute some of my duties. And the reason you saw me today, even yesterday, actually, I was in the community down there in Waisi. Today, I have had an action-packed day program, and glory be to the Almighty. Yeah. So that is it, because what I really went through was too much on my side. Undergoing that operation, which took several hours, and of course, going even the ICU, battling for survival, battling for life, your life support. And you can always imagine what goes through my mind what went through my mind at that particular time. But I am grateful to the Almighty. He gave me a chance to
continue operating normally.
Though I'm still again struggling, I'm yet to recover my full strength. But I'll request the listeners to bear with me. Even as I speak right now, I have lots of difficulties, but you'll bear with me. Yeah,
I can notice the pace at which you're speaking is not normal, and
you'll bear with me.
All right.
You can tell the viewers at least the incision here.
There's a strain on your throat.
They had to tamper with it. They had to go through the neck here. to reach the back, to remove that herniated disc, replace it with an artificial one. And you can imagine what I'm going through to get back into my shape.
All right.
Yeah.
We pray for your full recovery.
Thank you.
Well, like they say, the struggle continues, and we now have this situation which partly affects the people that you lead. People gave you a mandate in Kampala as the Lord Mayor. The issue of the evictions that are going on, and I'm sure you've heard the argument that has been given by NEMA. It's out of goodwill to protect the environment, but also to save the city that you lead from several challenges, including the floods that continue to occur. But let's begin in principle. What do you think about the decision to finally stand up and take action to protect wetlands?
No, I think let's, before you go into the specifics, just get a general picture of the crisis, the magnitude, the gravity of the challenge before us. That's when you'll appreciate that whatever they are doing is nothing. Nothing. Actually, it's just a matter of causing havoc to the indigents. The challenge is enormous. It's quite big. When you look at Article 237 of the Constitution, the spirit was, let's get wetlands. Let's get these water bodies. Let us have all these low-lying areas vested in the government. They shouldn't be owned by individuals. That was the overriding, the principle within the Constitution. That's the spirit, the wisdom of the framers of our Constitution, who said, look, Kenneth, you and I should not have a title in a wetland. We shouldn't have a title extending into the water body, into any of those ecosystems. Let the forests and the reserves we have, the forest reserves, be protected and properly gazetted, and they should vest in Uganda Land Commission. They created that body and said, okay, fine, it should be owned by government. It shouldn't be alienated. It shouldn't be owned by particular individuals. But how do government own it? Because also government operates through structures. They created the Uganda Land Commission with a mandate to own this land for and on behalf of the people of Uganda as trustees, without any power, authority, mandate to alienate that land. What happened along the way? These people arrogated themselves powers to alienate wetlands, forests. Many people have acquired leases. Read the provisions of the Constitution that created the Uganda Land Commission to own and control land owned by government. There's nowhere they were given powers to create leases, which now they have converted into freeholds, private titles owned by particular individuals, investors and whatnot. That was the beginning of degradation of the environment. When Uganda Land Commission arrogated themselves those powers, their sister agencies, the district land boards, also arrogated themselves similar powers. At least for them, they were given some latitude to own and allocate land. But there is a caveat. Land which is not owned by anybody or agency or authority or government. Which kind of land is that? Heavens knows. But at least they were given that mandate. The district land boards. I am here. I've been at Kampala Capital City Authority since 2011. And even before then, I was a leader. You were aware, I was a member of parliament.
And even before that, people were in Kampala.
Exactly.
Leading Kampala were also...
Exactly. We knew each other. They were close associates. But we had running battles all through. We have had running battles over those issues, creating land titles in wetlands and alienating even all these reserved places, there is backfilling of Lake Victoria. It's unabated, I'm telling you. The level at which we are having backfilling, it is too much on all the shores of Lake Victoria. All the forests countrywide. The forest cover. Can you imagine Uganda at independence? We had the total land mass 241,000 square kilometers of land. But 75,000 was either forest or forest reserves. To be exact, 45, around 50 something was for forest cover. And then you have a reserve of 15 and so on and so forth. Over time, what has happened? Land grabbers have now alienated this land. Land bonanza everywhere. Chief culprit, the president himself.
Really?
Yes. He's doling out land. This what don't you know? Now we are talking about Bungoma Forest. We had the battles where I was arrested, Mabira Forest, with the Honorable Dongo and others, and I had to go up to Luzira over Mabira demonstrations. Who was giving out that land? Who was given out to Bungoma Forest?
It may not be it may not be directly the president. And there are people within government who have the vested powers to actually give out some of these lands. For instance,
are you sure you have not seen those executive orders?
For instance, we have had district land boards actually giving out pieces of land.
Yes, it's true. It's a fact.
So it may not be entirely the president.
Yeah, but it starts from the office of the president.
And even here in Kampala.
And it cascades, it goes down.
Even here in Kampala, we have had, in the past, the district land board actually being implicated in giving away pieces of land, including those that are
huge chunks of land.
Yes, those that had greenery.
Exactly.
That was not the president.
All parks are now gone, including City Square. You can imagine. So that's how bad the situation is. That's the gravity of the matter. So whatever NEMA is doing right now is just a joke. It's just a scratch on surface. It's a huge problem. Restoration of the environment has to be done deliberately. It has to be intentional. It has to have a systematic program, and it has to be done countrywide. And actually, it has to be a national program.
But there has to be a starting point.
No, a starting point can't be just a gamble. You don't just wake up, get graders, raise down some structures in the Rubiji corridors. That is more or less of grandstanding.
All right.
That is posturing.
Why do you think
at a very big cost?
Why do you
think
I
think it's a gamble? There's no national policy on land use. You get it?
But we know very
well.
And
the Constitution commands the government to
well
come up with a policy on land use.
Well, earlier
forget about land ownership, because that is a challenge. The land tenure system is still problematic. But even land use, because government is mandated, of course you'll excuse government in as far as the land tenure system is concerned. It has always been problematic since colonial days. But right from the time we came up with the Uganda Agreement, all through independence, and the Land Reform Decree of 1975, and all these reforms that have been pursued over the years, they have always been futile. I mean, a fiasco. But with land use, I've told you, under Article 237, government was mandated to protect it. Forests, forest reserves, wetlands, water bodies.
And what I wanted to tell you is just common sense, that you can't construct and reside in a wetland. Doesn't even require to be mentioned in the land use policy.
This is the point. No, it has to be in the land use policy.
So how well, can somebody just...
Land use policy has to be comprehensive.
Can you, the Lord Mayor, Erias Lukwago, construct in a wetland for the sake of it?
Listen, I own a title. If I owned, I don't have one. But if I acquired a title in a wetland, I go to NEMA and seek for leave to have some structure built there. For heaven's sake.
NEMA gives you clearance?
NEMA gives me clearance. Like people who took over the Lukwago playgrounds. You mean they are not individuals, those who own Forest Mall?
Now, let's look at this Luigi evictions.
Why don't you want also to look at the Lukwago?
All right.
Yes.
You can continue with that, right? But we are trying to match it with the Luigi.
Okay, fine.
Because you...
Now you are zeroing down on Luigi.
Yes.
And this is one of the questions I posed to the ED.
Why
all the might? Why all the force on Luigi?
All right. We want to understand clearly whether you think these people who had settled in Luigi followed the processes. We might be talking about the mall in Lukwago. We might be talking about all these other different places. And yet maybe NEMA did clear them. That's an entire story. Let's look at this incident in Luigi. Have you seen any people complaining and saying, well, we need to be heard, we have rights here, we were cleared by NEMA or the district authorities to construct our houses in this place?
In the first place, you don't blame it on the individuals who are affected by these operations. The duty rests with NEMA. They have the obligation, first and foremost, of putting in place systems for land management. And there is a provision in the article, in this NEMA Act, which I have here. If you may permit me to read it out. The first culprit in section 158, you will tell me who it is, but for me, my duty is just to read it out. 158, I'm sorry I'm not getting it very fast. Yes, I am there. Section 158. Failure to establish environmental management systems as the head note. You would help me because I'm straining myself to read so much, at least for the listeners to understand. Yeah, if you could read it out.
Which particular
Section
area?
158.
Section 158. Any operator who fails to establish, maintain, and implement an environmental management system commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 50,000 currency points or imprisonment not exceeding 10 years or both.
The obligation starts with putting in place environmental management systems, failure of which you commit an offense.
Well, we have NEMA.
Exactly, the ED, and I told him, I pointed out these provisions to him. He committed this offense. If you are talking about implementing the law, you start with the person who is supposed to put in place the systems. He's culpable, and that is the ED. Well, he gave an excuse. He's been in office for 2 years.
Where has he failed?
That he has assumed office. He assumed office on 2nd September 2022. Where he has failed, I'll point out those areas. The illegalities here now. Number one, NEMA is thin on ground. And the people ought to be sensitized about what is happening, what is going to happen. And they are supposed to be regulated. The framers of this law, that is Parliament, deemed it necessary and indeed imperative to have structures to help NEMA in executing this duty. That's the reason they inserted section 29. If you would read, rather section 26 of this law. Environment management by urban district councils. Urban and district councils shall be responsible for the management of the environment and the natural resources under their jurisdiction. Do you understand that? This is in section 26. Who has the duty of managing environment in the city? The district urban council.
In this case, KCCA.
In this case, KCCA. They went ahead and provided for the creation of a committee under section 27, District Environment and Natural Resources Committee. Every district shall establish a District Environment and Natural Resources Committee, which shall comprise of the district chairperson, who is the Lord Mayor, members of Parliament. We have 9 constituencies, and 1 woman MP. The resident district commissioner, she's there. The secretary for environment, that is my minister for environment. District natural resources officers, that's our director, public health, who is Dr. Okero, you know him very well. Then the chief administrative officer, who is the ED, Madam Chisaka. The district engineer, our state engineer, you know him, Akankwasa. The town clerks of the divisions, the mayors of all the 5 divisions, the district planner, who is the district, the one who is the director in charge of physical planning, and so on and so forth. Now, look at this particular provision. And then the functions are laid out here. I don't have time to read out all the functions. But the long and short of it, in section 27, the mandate to manage environmental issues in Kampala is with this committee.
And you've been sleeping on your job?
No way. And this is one of the issues we raised. The framers of the law put there, subsection 2 of section 27. The members of the committee shall elect from amongst themselves a chairperson and vice chairperson of the committee. They never said that the Lord Mayor shall chair the committee. If they had said so, I would take action. But in this case, they said we shall sit and from amongst ourselves we elect a chairperson. Who should take the first step of constituting this committee is the returning officer. And that the returning officer is the one who is in charge, the overall supremo of environmental management in the country, responsible for management of environment in the country. That is the ED. So this is why I'm saying under section 158, he committed an offense by failing to put in place systems intended to manage environment in the country. You'll ask him if we have any of the districts, we have close to 150 districts now. If there is even a single committee, at NEMA they are saying they are thin. They have very few staff. Actually, when we met him today, they were recruiting staff. They were conducting interviews to recruit more staff. That they are only 130. They are understaffed. But the law made it very easy for them. Create these committees as structures in the districts to help you execute this duty. All right.
Stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90, Lord Mayor. Let's go for a break right now. When we return, we'll try to understand why that committee is very important. Of what relevance would it be in the situation where we are? But we also want to hear what you have agreed upon in the meeting that you had with the executive director, where you raised a number of issues concerning the ongoing evictions. Well, listeners, stay tuned to Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll continue hearing the perspective of political leaders in Kampala about the ongoing evictions by NEMA, about those who are settled in wetlands. But keep your comments coming via the WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090, and the Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago will respond to you.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. Our topic of discussion today, perspective of political leaders in Kampala on the ongoing NEMA Wetland Evictions. My guest, His Worship Erias Lukwago, the Lord Mayor of Kampala, capital city. Keep your comments coming on our WhatsApp line, which is 0703 090. Tell us where you're listening from. Give us your experience with this wetland eviction, but also tell us what would be the win-win situation. We need the environment, but we also need to have people settled without any inconveniences. Is it the right place for them actually to be in the wetlands? And if not, what do you think the government needs to do to address their concerns? Before we went for a break, we were looking at the committee, the District Environmental Committee, in this case, KCCA. If we had this committee in place, how different would these evictions be?
Of course, you look at the provisions of Section 28, the mandate, the obligation of this committee, a whole array of all the functions they have to perform, coordinating all matters relating to environment, preparing regular reports, disseminating information to the communities in different localities. In other words, all issues relating to management of environment would be handled by this committee. NEMA wouldn't have to move to the ground to have the executive, because how can you have the executive director move to each and every corner of this country? It's not practically possible. They even have an officer whom they call EFC, environmental whatever force something.
There's a police, environmental police.
But you do not have capacity to do so. That police cannot police the entire country. It's not possible. It would be the law enforcement force of KCCA to handle. Two, even when it is about evictions to be conducted, it would be the local communities who would be involved in this. Because KCCA would go and do the demarcation. I'll tell you to be specific about Lubigi, for example. For us, we have our own team who are working on, for example, on that corridor. The channel, we got money from World Bank to fix that drainage channel. We did the demarcation and the mapping, and we put there those pillars, the mark stones. And ordinarily, we would harmonize with the NEMA and get to understand the areas of this wetland, the corridor.
So if the committee was in place, it would do the demarcation?
It would handle issues to do with the demarcations. NEMA cannot demarcate.
NEMA is supposed to be represented on that committee, not so?
No, because we are an integral part of NEMA.
All right.
We are actually...
You are structured under NEMA.
We are structured under NEMA, and we are supposed to report
So you'll be reporting to NEMA.
We would conduct the demarcation and report to NEMA. We would sensitize the people that in those areas we have demarcated, please, it's a no-go area. Don't go there. You go there at your own risk. Now, I've been giving you an example of Rubigi. We did our demarcation for them as we are mapping the corridor for the drainage channel Rubigi. And this is what the communities in those areas respected. Yesterday I was in Bwaise 3 with the local leaders. They LCs themselves took it upon themselves to say, no, KCCA put these mark stones here. And they are restraining residents from going beyond those limits. You would appreciate the role the LCs have played. LC 2, LC 1 in Bwaise 3 there. Kamalimali zone, Katogo zone, Bokasa zone, and many others. St. Francis. So they do that work. So ordinarily that would be the work of KCCA. NEMA cannot do this. Even with evictions, can you imagine? They are illegally using our graders. Do you know one of the reasons why they are concentrating here in Kampala? Because Kampala has got its own bulldozers. If they were to do it in Kalungu, my home district, the whole district doesn't have even a single bulldozer.
Well, the districts are supposed to have road units.
Those for road construction, they are not there unless they are going to borrow from UNRA. So this is why I'm telling you, even if they were to pull down structures in my home district, Kalungu, they will have to use the graders from here or UNRA. They don't have that capacity. NEMA does not have that capacity. But for you to use our graders, I must be involved in decision-making processes. It's the reason this law was put there that, look, the districts as units should be an integral part of NEMA, so that if you have to take a decision to raise down certain structures, they must be part of the decision-making exercises or processes. Don't just treat them as if they don't matter. You circumvent the processes, they're on the receiving end, and for you just take the graders. So you know what they are doing right now? The NEMA, the ED just reaches out to our ED and the director engineering, casually like that, without even an official communication. Can you imagine? I would like to use your bulldozers. Then they get the RCCs.
You want bureaucracy?
It's not bureaucracy, systems. This where I started from. Everything must be done systematically. It has to be neat. I always come here before you. I got issues every Friday. You give us order paper with the topics to be handled, and then we move systematically. We can't move haphazardly like that, bila mupango, without a plan. Right. That cannot happen. So that is a violation of the law. The other thing is about the restoration orders. NEMA, yes, is mandated under Section 130. First of all, and Section 129 to issue out those orders. That if you found in breach of the NEMA regulations, you may be asked by NEMA by way of a restoration order, not to vacate, no, but to restore the environment. Where NEMA is going wrong is conduct an eviction exercise. You are not supposed to evict, because we are talking about two different things. I own my land. Whether it's a chibanja or titled land, it's my land. And the law allows me to own it.
It's your land.
It's my land.
But if there's a wetland there, whatever you do there must be sanctioned by NEMA.
Exactly. NEMA has got powers to issue a restoration order that I should personally remove the illegal structures you are talking about, you are condemning. It's my duty to remove the structures and restore the environment
the way it was.
The way it was, ante.
So if you don't
the
move,
status quo, ante.
If you don't move, what does NEMA do?
NEMA has to prosecute me. That's what the law says. If I don't comply, the law says I commit an offense. And once I'm prosecuted and convicted, either I compensate government for causing damage to the environment, or imprisoned, or both. And consequential orders may be given by court for demolition. No, NEMA has no powers or authority to issue demolition orders. Because with the demolition orders, yes, with the demolition orders, you are conducting an eviction. Actually, you are dispossessing a particular individual of their own property.
Well, the property stays yours, but they're simply
Exactly.
telling you not to do bad things
I'm
in the
asking
wetland.
now the question I'm posing to you. Those who have been evicted in Nansana, where it is Wachiso, it's not my area of jurisdiction.
Well, it's Kampala metropolitan
It's Kampala
area.
metropolitan area. But you ask, have they allowed the people whose property has been demolished to retain their land? That you are free to use your land in compliance with, look at...
that is the case, I
look
think.
at Schedule 6 of this
I've
Act.
seen people who have provided NEMA with
Look at
authorization.
Section 163. Regulated activities in wetlands. They are listed there. So if one
It
is...
does not include construction. And NEMA has been targeting the buildings.
But they have even...
If
been
you had a
uprooting-
fish pond in the wetlands, I'm sure they wouldn't have
They
touched
have
it.
even uprooting cassava. These graders are raising everything. You have not seen these graders? I wish we were on TV.
I have seen a couple
You
of them.
would be having these footages where the graders are pulling down banana plantations.
I actually go through
Yes.
Luigi on the way to
The
Nansana.
cassava plantations, what not? Is that allowed or not? I will ask you. That activity is permitted within a wetland. So the question you will ask, why did you plant a cassava there without a NEMA certificate?
Exactly.
And the NEMA has not sensitized these people about the need or the requirement for one to have a certificate. It's only these tycoons who go there and acquire certificates illegally. You have had those cases of the Sudiris now acquiring certificates to do backfilling in Munyonyo. The petrol stations they are talking about, all these factories they are talking about, many of them, the ED will tell you they have certificates. How did they come to acquire them? He's washing his hands out of it. He said they came before he assumed office. That when he assumed office by 2nd of September 2022, he issued a moratorium prohibiting issuance of that's what he told us. But we are subject to verification. We want to verify whether indeed there hasn't been any certificate issued from that time.
All right. So what have you agreed upon in your meeting? Are the evictions going on?
Now there are petitions raised. And the Section 132 commands the ED
Of NEMA.
To constitute, call them grievance handling committees. Because if you are issued with a restoration order, that please put down your structure within 21 days, you have a right, you are at liberty to submit in a petition or a complaint seeking for review of that particular order. And the ED is commanded within 14 days to constitute a committee. So there are petitions that had been filed, at least from Kawala. So the ED agreed now to constitute that committee and to dispose of those petitions within July.
Okay.
Not later than July, rather. I started with the district environment management committee. We called a meeting to have it constituted last week, but the meeting aborted Wednesday. We were at a Sarah hotel. NEMA wasn't represented, and we asked the ED, said he wasn't aware of it. Going forward, he has agreed he's going to spearhead all the processes of constituting the committee not later than 15th July. That committee, the city environment management committee, so that we execute our duties under section 28 as a structure, an integral structure of NEMA. Then we also looked at certain specific cases, exceptional cases. There are people who are within corridors reserved for roads, for civil works, for certain roads. Say, for example, Ginger Expressway. UNRA is supposed to compensate people in that particular corridor. You find so many homesteads in Kasokoso, Chinawataka, Machindi, many were paid in Machindi, but majority in Kasokoso, Chinawataka, they have not been compensated. And that particular area, and NEMA, and rather, UNRA is supposed to compensate them. They are still looking for money. They are still sorting out some legal issues. There are those who require letters of administration, paperwork, and whatnot. So somebody is processing their letters of administration. NEMA is telling them, so once you have got to secure the papers, we shall compensate, we shall pay you. NEMA, you come and raise them on the ground. He agreed. The ED agreed and said, no, that cannot happen. That process is halted. Even in our corridor in Rubiji, it is the same story. You go to Kawala, Namungona, parts of Bwaise, many people have not been compensated. Under Kidipu 2, Kampala Institution and Infrastructure Development Project, funded by World Bank for the reconstruction of the Rubiji channel. Many have not been compensated. So and they are still pushing for compensation. They are holding on to their property until they are compensated. And it's not the duty of NEMA to compensate them. It's another agency, KCCA. And in the case of the road reserves, it is UNRA which is going to compensate them. And the agencies have agreed to because it's a mandatory requirement under all the agreements signed with World Bank. You have to consider up costs. So those are peculiar cases. We agreed they shouldn't be touched until all this is done. There are those whose houses have been marked with X, like in Bwaise 3. Those areas I've mentioned, Bokasa, Kamalimali, and many others, Katoga, and so on and so forth. NEMA just came on their own, never spoke to anyone, and started marking X. The LOCs of the area were there to testify before the ED, the local chairpersons, all of them. They asked those people who were doing the marking and asked them, please, what is this exercise you are doing? There is one lady, she's called the Hajatin Nakuburwa. Hajati Nakuburwa has her own title. He said, but you people, I'm even outside the demarcated area by KCCA because she's not within the corridor demarcated by KCCA. These people were told you can only call 3 lines if you want a remedy. General Kaguta Museveni, General Salim Saleh, or General Muhoozi. This is on record. These are LOC officials, and some of whom actually are NRM. They are not opposition. All right. So you can imagine those illegalities. And these are the things we said, all these matters should be ironed out going forward. All right. Let's get the feedback from people who are listening to us. I'll begin with Albert Wandara, who writes in and says... the last one, maybe... I'll come to you. Okay. Maybe you'll stress it out. You'll talk about it when you're responding to some of these issues. It might be a cross-cutting issue. Well, we have a comment from Albert Wandera, who says, Kampala City Authority is a bus that its leadership led by Lord Mayor has failed to locate the steering of this bus, but thrives on politics of the seat. Our Lord Mayor and his office has always been patrons of people who build in wetlands. That's Albert Wandera there with that comment. In the past, it used to rain
for more than 8 hours and there were no floods in Kampala. These days when it rains for 40 minutes, floods are everywhere. People affected by floods will need food, blankets, mattresses, plus compensation from Office of the Prime Minister. Let NEMA solve from root cause before it is too late. You blame NEMA for doing its work. You as mayor, you have failed to eliminate garbage and to work on roads in the city. That is Muhirwe Peter from Rukunjiri. We have a comment coming in from Benon Fred Finamasko. How is NEMA going to ascertain the wetland boundaries for papyrus which freely float around in swamps? Even satellite images will have a 10-meter error on ground. Greetings to the Lord Mayor. We have a comment coming in from Henry, who is listening in from Buate. Says, Mr. Lukwago, since the environment has been grossly defiled, do you think it's still possible to restore the wetlands and forests? Is there hope that a wetland can still come back to its place? We have another comment from Anthony. Good evening, Spectrum. Most cases, wetlands are supposed to be reserved to build big projects that can create employments and more to the country, for not for quick buildings. People have been occupying the wetlands for making their private finances because they found it free. Lukwago, please allow NEMA to do their work unless you are becoming sympathetic. Unless you're becoming sympathetic. That's what he is actually suggesting there. That's a comment from Anthony. We have another one. If it's your land, don't construct a house, but use it for farming. Get reeds for construction or grass for thatching materials. That's a contribution from one of the listeners who are actually advising on how environment can be, wetlands can be used. The Lord Mayor is blaming NEMA on failure to establish the committee, yet he is also part of the government. Let him tell us, as a political leader, what steps he has taken to call upon NEMA to establish the committee in Kampala. Has he ever written to NEMA requesting them to establish the committee? What has he done at KCCA? We have a comment. Dear Kenneth, tell the Lord Mayor that where institutions have failed, NEMA can't be an exception. NEMA can't be blamed because almost all institutions are down. For example, if KCCA was serious, should have approached NEMA to have the environmental committee put in place. Bottom, as long as we don't plan for the increasing population, deal with rural-urban migration, impunity, etc., all wetlands will be cleared. That's a comment from Edison. Then we have a comment from Jibril who says, you can use a wetland adjacent to your land, but a wetland can't be a private property. That's a comment from Jibril there. A quick response to the listeners on those issues that they have put across.
Quite a number of them. Unfortunately, I may not have time to respond to all of them.
Well, there are those who are merely suggestions on how wetlands can be used. But there are those who are directly saying
contribution. Question, the fundamental question from all those questions, those issues raised. The fundamental issue rather is, are wetlands redeemable or not? Because allow me frame those broader issues. Is what NEMA doing commendable or not? I'll respond to them very fast. We had occasion in this meeting, the engagement we had with the ED, to reflect on that issue, on the first issue, whether all the wetlands are redeemable. Consensus was, with all, and it's regrettable that it may be a mirage. It may be far-fetched to imagine that you will redeem, because NEMA does not have capacity now to pull down all these structures.
But it's pulling them down.
No, they are going in on the helpless. Let me tell you, Nachivubo Memorial Stadium is sitting in a wetland. The Hams Stadium now. You have to bring it down.
There was there was a stadium there already.
Forget about the stadium, the mall. It wasn't there. You have to bring it down that mall. You get it? You've got to bring down all those malls in Rugogo. You've got to bring down this golf course mall. You've got to bring down the Speak Resort Munyonyo, part of it, that marina, where they reclaim the Lake Victoria, and a couple of others. You go to Kazi, you go to Chitubulu, you go wherever, very well. Let us be realistic.
On ground that they were
so those who are blaming me, those who are blaming, do I manage all those areas? Am I responsible for the mess there is in this country? That's why I told you the crisis. You go to Luera, for example. You go to Katonga. What is happening in Katonga? You go to Ruera and many others. So we agreed in the meeting. What is good for the goose is good for the gander. Don't apply the law selectively. If you have spared the petrol stations because they have certificates, if you have spared the factories, there is a Tirupati here. They are doing it, backfilling. Go and see here in Kawempe, Tirupati, and many others. If you have spared those ones, why don't we take a broader assessment of what is redeemable and what is not redeemable? The ED agreed to that suggestion and said actually we should have outreach programs in all these areas. He agreed that the LOC areas conduct meetings. Why he said, for example, the whole parish, when he showed us the map, those villages I've mentioned, I think there are 6 villages in a parish. The whole of it is within that corridor mapped by NEMA. So if you are to raise all the structures to the ground, over 50,000 people will be homeless.
All right.
Will be destitutes. So we are saying this now brings me to the second question. Is what NEMA doing right? I am not in for the end justifies the means, the Machiavellian principle. I always want to follow the due process. In my training as a lawyer, procedural law is as good as important, is as important as substantive law. Procedural justice, in other words, is as good as substantive justice. Procedural justice is as good as substantive justice. So, what NEMA is doing, they are not following the procedures laid down in the law. They are not, in other words, they are not dispensing procedural justice. The result may be sweet to you who wants the environment restored, but how about the injustice occasioned to the affected parties?
All right.
So the last thing is, do you want to address a particular crisis, the environmental crisis, and create a humanitarian crisis? That's a fundamental issue, a fundamental question. And me as a leader, you are choosing of politicking, I'm focusing on that. I have those lenses. So I don't want to create a class of destitutes.
All right.
A big arm of homeless, displaced, internally displaced. Actually, we told the ED, the next thing we are going to do as the people of Kampala is to create camps for internally displaced people. These homeless people. You saw the people in Lusanja. They had tents there. Even ministers would come and bring food relief. Can you imagine?
All right. One last comment from Henry listening in from Banda, who says, hello, Kenneth, thank you for hosting the Mlode, and we thank Allah for saving his life. When you hosted the NEMA ED on the 17th of June, he gave excuses that NEMA can't be everywhere to monitor people encroaching on wetlands. I posted a question about why NEMA is not working with local councils, but there was no time for him to respond. I'm surprised to find out that the law actually commands NEMA to work with those structures. The problem we have with government office is impunity and
at least there are people who are listening in.
Well, there are people
objectively.
All right.
Yes.
I'm afraid that's all we could have this evening, Lord Mayor Erias Lukwago. We have to bring this show to the end. Thank you very much for making time to be with us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, up next on Radio 1, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BB Junior.